How to stretch bob wire, take 1. Here we are on a 4-string bob wire fence. We've had some pretty bad tumbleweed pressure this year. This isn't the worst spot by any means, but one thing that's going to happen is I wanted to stretch this wire, and I know these wires are going to start loosening up. So it's pretty typical when that happens. And this is how I deal with, I don't know, saggy bob wire fences that are really old. Newer fences, you don't really need to do it like this, but this works pretty good. These are just a goldenrod stretcher. Always give it a little latch clamp down. On this particular setup, I'm going to be using a crimp on these wires just because they're so old. And one of the reasons I like a crimp on old wire is because you twist that wire a few times and it's really weak and brittle and it just breaks. Hopefully you can see these barbs right here, and I'm going to take my cutter. I'm going to cut it right next to that barb. And what that will do is that will give me a little bit of extra space to work with when I go to put that crimp back in. So this is pretty typical of what happens when you start stretching these wires. This is a wood fence post, so it's not as bad as a metal T-post. Especially when it comes to stretching bob wire like this old bob wire, it definitely takes a feel of when to know to stop stretching before it snaps. And my problem is I always say one more. That's my one more, okay. But now, as you can see, this wire is really loose. This one's pretty loose, and this bottom one's just ridiculously loose. So this is kind of what I do to keep the whole fence stretched all at once. And I know a lot of people are going to give me a hard time about it, but I put extra stretchers on each one. And I can hear the comments coming in already. God, you have 4 stretchers? Yeah, I do. Actually, I carry about 6 stretchers in my pickup because this works so good. So as you can see, it's definitely taking the slack out. I'm going to cut this right next to that barb. I'll show you why in a minute. Stretch this bottom one up good. And these are new stretchers too. Like I don't mess with old stretchers. Once they start slipping, they're gone. They're only like 50 bucks. And if you've ever had your fingers stuck in between wires when you're stretching them, it's not worth it. That's pretty tight there. Yeah, see, these guys are real loose now. So I'll just keep on going. And typically I always start at the bottom and work my way up when I'm stretching these wires like this. Here's an older stretcher here. Let's see. Yeah, see how did you hear it snap there? That means these stretchers are about to go to the dump. This will probably be their last summer for sure. So now I got these 3. This wire before was really tight, and as you can see, there's a little bit of play in there. Yeah, so let's go ahead and stretch this last one up real quick, and then we'll go back and just touch them all, double check all these individual stretchers, and just make sure, putting it in the clamps. Always give it an extra little, call it a little love tap. A little love might save your finger. Okay. And then, like I said, always cut it right next to that barb. I slide my tool all the way over, right there. And this here is just a crimping tool. As you can see on the back side, this piece here is for cutting, and then the top part of that right here is for crimping, because when you close it down all the way, there's a space in that top half. So let's go ahead and hit this top piece a little bit. There you go. Now, before I started, This top wire right here was so tight that there's no way you could have got this much more out of it. But by stretching the whole fence together, it just stretches that whole, every single wire together at an equal force. And your fence, doing it this way, you don't have one loose wire flapping in the wind down the road. And long story short, it takes a little bit longer, yes, but this right here will preserve this whole fence for 200 yards that way and 200 yards that way for probably 2 years just by having it so tight. So it is old wire, and old wire breaks really easy, and that is why I like to use these right here. They're little. So this is what I'm going to be using here. It's a little it's a crimp clamp. They're like 12 bucks for 100 of them. So it is an added cost, but it's pretty cheap for what you get out of it. So let's go ahead and touch all these one more time, because as you tighten that last one, there's always, you can go back through and usually get at least 1 or 2 more clicks out of there. Let's see what we can do. Oh, this is tight, guys. Tight, tight. All right. So now that I cut my wire, the end, we overstretched here a little bit, or I got a little extra space to work with here, which is all right. I always use my cutting tool to cut these crimps. I try to leave as much as possible. So you just slide it on there like that. And with this other piece of wire, hopefully you can see this, just take this little round crimping tool, you slide it over the top of that wire right there. Just like this. You bring it all the way to the end, and you bring this piece here up. I'm trying to do this one-handed here, guys. And then you just slide this piece back over. Come on now. You can almost like wrap the wires around each other like this a little bit, and then it helps quite a bit, slide them on. And then when they get real tight like that, I usually just take my pliers. You can see how that wire, come on, that wire right there is just poking through. You want it right in the middle. So I usually just take my pliers like this, and you can either twist it on like this, that works, or you just give it some taps. And usually a few good little taps, put it on there. Each one's different. But yeah, so I mean, that's more than enough wire sticking out right here and on this side to do a good job. And then this is where the crimper comes in. I like to put about 4 crimps in there, just like this. 1, 2. And a trick when you're moving from crimp to crimp is don't open it up all the way. See, if you open it up all the way, it slides. So just open it up a little bit, and then 3, 4. Okay. So that one's done. We're good. Man, that's tight. That will hold. I'm not worried about that at all. But if you are worried about it, just put a little bend in this wire on the other end, just like this. There's nothing coming out of that now. Anyways, I'm going to knock out the rest of these real quick, and then yeah, we'll take a closer look at it when it's done. There we go. That fence is tight. So as you can see, guys, we're super tight here now. All the way down there. And it did take four clips, and it does take a little bit longer. I know that's a pile of stretchers, but it's the way I've been doing it. And again, this is really for this older wire that as soon as you start twisting it, it breaks. Kind of like this. And then all of a sudden it starts breaking on you. So that's, yeah, that's a typical example of what old wire does to you, is it'll just get weak and break. So that's why I use these, because when you start wrapping the wire around itself, a lot of times in your actual splice is when it'll break. So these work really, really good for old wire and for new. It is definitely a lot longer and it takes more time. So if you're in a hurry, yeah, just splice it, whatever. but if you want to do it right, definitely get these things. This year, I'll try to put a link in the description. But yeah, this thing here is where it's at. Like, you got to have these if you're going to be using these splices. And like I said, I use these stretchers. They're 50 bucks. I just plan on buying a bunch of them. Well, this fence is tight, like nothing is going to get through that. If anything, a little baby calf might crawl under, but I left enough space in here that the calf could crawl back in if it needed to. So there's one little corner done. We did that kind of all the way up to this corner, and now we're gonna keep on going. I got another mile this way and about half a mile, another mile. This isn't a very big pasture, but it's good because this pasture has lots of cheatgrass in it that comes on pretty early. It's already starting to come on. This stuff will explode in the next 3-4 days. So that's how I fix barbed wire. It's not how everybody fixes barbed wire, but that is a good way to work with really old wire. So when your wire is so old you bend it and it breaks, those crimper splices are great to work with on this old stuff. There's no way I could have got this old wire this tight doing it one wire at a time and using the conventional splices. Plus, the other thing about using old wires like this is that wire is going to last. This will be tight in another 3 years. 3, 4, 5 years from now, this will be good still. So that's why I like them. It takes longer to do it. That's why I do it. But there is a faster way to splice wire. I'll show you here in a second. The next one that comes up, I'll show you how to do it.